Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. It's your host Kelly, and I'm excited to have you back and join in on another episode of Rising Convert Experience. As you know, this podcast focuses on discussing experiences I've had, sharing my personal journey, and opening up the space and having candid conversations from a Muslim perspective. To stay up to date with what we got going on the pod, be sure to hit that like and follow subscription on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple at Rising Convert, on Instagram and TikTok. All right, let's dive into it. So some of you know that I've been away and quiet for a while, and that's because I did make the transition to just officially becoming a stay-at-home mom. So to touch a little bit about that, it was a bit of a whirlwind time for both my husband and I. We were just constantly thinking about what it was like to have both parents work. And then even if I was working remotely, how much actual time I'd be spending with the little one and what that would potentially do and with mine and her relationship. And then we also were talking about what we really needed and what sacrifices can be made. And I think ultimately, as the date was getting closer for me to go back to work, the more I was like, I don't want to. If we can make it happen, then let's make it happen so we can stay home. And my husband was also, really thinking about the idea of daycare less and less. And we both just realized that we don't want to do either. We don't want to put her in daycare, and we don't want her to feel disconnected from us. And so we thought we'd make the most of the time. And so that was the decision that I made, or I guess we made, but he really did give me the ultimate choice, of course, to make that choice of staying at home full time and being with her, and then also taking in care of the home and managing all the things. So it's been great, alhamdulillah. And so I feel so blessed to have this time. It's not just time with my daughter, but it also gave me an opportunity to rebuild and have intentional relationships with people here in Calgary. Being in mom era, I feel like there's a lot of moms you can relate with, and so there's a lot more to talk about. Therefore, things are a little bit more easier, and I feel like, because I've been talking to and relating to a lot of people who are in similar situations that I am in, we've been able to have open and honest and vulnerable conversations. So we've really gotten to know each other. And so through these honest and vulnerable conversations, there's been a few reflections I've had. And that's really what has inspired me to want to share these reflections and thoughts here on the podcast, because everyone in my mom's circle knows that I'm a Muslim convert. A few of them have come over and we've hung out, and they've gotten to see our home space. And I think a couple of them have met my husband, and they find it so fascinating to know that I'm a Muslim convert who's lives in a place and city where there's no family, and on my side that lives with me here, and that I have just lived life here and started something different from what my family values at home. And so there's just been a lot of conversations around that. I think the cool thing that has really come from these relationships is how everyone's always asking me questions in regards to my child and inshallah future children, because we all talk about having more than one kid. So this is what I'm going to share with you guys. So first things first, the first question that I've received and I found to be quite difficult to answer in the moment, the one around the hijab. And so people always ask me if I would feel a certain type of way about my daughter choosing to take off the hijab. And, this question comes up, and it always goes back to my daughter, because I've shared my journey about the hijab. I've shared my struggles. I've shared the challenges that I do face, throughout seasons. I've also have shared, the steps that I took when it came to wearing the hijab with my family, and the conversations I've had to have, or the indirect comments that, tell me that, this is something that not everyone approves of on my end, and also how it also was seen a certain way on my husband's side of the family, and also in general how it's seen in the Muslim community. And so I think because I've been able to conversate with a lot of these mothers around the subject of beauty, Islam, and mainly the hijab, they see my little one constantly playing around with the scarves at the library. She'll put them on and she'll call them the hijab, and she'll play around with it, and she'll just basically grab anything, throw it over her head. And so that's how this came up. And the first thing that I thought about when it came to answering this question, and when I was thinking about it, is how people currently in this day and age are responding to Muslim women who do take off the hijab. And I want to note that whenever I see it, I always feel sad, but I also feel like I want to be one of those people, whether that's on social or whether that's in person, if the opportunity is there, to show them love and to show them encouragement and to empower them in the best way possible, so they can continue to feel connected to Islam. And unfortunately, we don't see a lot of that on social media, which is kind of scary, because I do think that our children, my children, inshallah, are going to continue to grow in this era where social media is really taking over and has such a strong influence. And people there can be so mean and not know where you're coming from, but still share their harsh opinions, and just because of what they're seeing. I think the beauty of being able to be a Muslim convert is also to be able to talk about the steps in the process, and also the privilege that I've had, when it comes to not being part of a circle that feels like there's a lot of pressure. So alhamdulillah, I feel grateful to have a bit of a different perspective and experience when it comes to wearing the hijab to some degree, because when I was thinking of wearing it, and I had a feeling, a deep feeling in my gut that that's the route that I wanted to take, I gave myself probably a little bit over a year and a half to learn the weight and truly understand the weight that the hijab carries, so much to the point that even after a year and a half of already wearing it officially, the doubts, the struggles that I experienced, and I even thought about, maybe I put it on too early, or I should take it off or something, I was able to see past it, and I was able to push through it, and not think so much about the current feelings that I was having. And so for some of you who might be listening to this and who are non-Muslim and are trying to figure out how to relate to this, say you were someone who is going to college and you feel like you know exactly where you're going to go, what degree, what career you're going to dive into, and you're a year or two in and you realize okay, I'm actually struggling with year 3 and 4's curriculum. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So now you're in this really deep thought. You're really thinking about what my next move is going to look like, but you're also thinking about all the shame and all the money and all the things that every single person might say and come on top of you for just because of this decision. There's the same sort of feeling that I felt in the moment where I was trying to think about, or when I was rambling and feeling I was a bit in shambles when it came to the hijab, and feeling I want to take it off, but I didn't. And so similar to the decision of choosing a degree or finishing a degree, I was well, if this really isn't going to serve me, so I'm going to go a different direction. So, the point of me sharing this is that I gave myself some time, and I know that there are born Muslims out there who tend to sometimes feel the pressure to have to wear it by a certain age. And there's always this conversation around it, and they're always pointing it out, it's the thing you need to do, and there's a bit of a guilt tripping that can happen, and I've heard from others that that is the thing. And so when I think about my little one, and I think about these moms that ask me questions around the hijab, I honestly feel if my daughter were to one day, inshallah, wear the hijab, and then also down the road say I don't want to, I wouldn't critique her. I wouldn't shame her for her decision. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen, and I also wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen. I think I would hope that she would find some influences that can support her in the struggles that maybe that she's facing and the challenges that she's facing. I also feel like if she's very young, when she chooses to wear the hijab, I would totally understand if later down the road she feels like there's a disconnect. Being a Muslim convert, married to a born Muslim man, knowing that my child is biracial will play a role, and that's actually one of the things I did. One of the reasons why I did bring it up, because I'm Latin. My family, the way we define beauty and see beauty is very different from the way my husband and the rest of his family, and I think among Muslims in general, see beauty. And I think that's what leads people to dress a certain way and see things a certain way and carry themselves a certain way. So I could see how we go visit my family and my little child, if, my girl decide to say, like, I never felt like I could fully experience the culture because I'm wearing a hijab, and like things are a little bit different when you wear the hijab, and that's an obvious fact. And like there are certain expectations, again, coming back to the weight of the hijab. And sometimes we hope that like our children who do decide to wear it early can grow wearing the hijab and understand and learn and seek more knowledge so they can continuously see the power of the hijab, but also see what it actually means and how it is that it can change their life in the best way. We would hope that they can be mature enough to understand that. But in reality, it is also a lot to ask out of our children. And so that's something that I believe, and that's just my opinion. Like, for me to expect for my child to grow with something and just fully get it so much to the point that they can go through some of the struggles and challenges. And we're talking about like puberty, like experiences, social environments that they're going to be a part of, connections that they're going to make, friendships that they're going to have. It's a lot. So yeah, if my little one decides to take it off, I would not shame them. I would always be there for them. I think it just goes to show that like there's a bit of a disconnect, and instead of pushing them more away from the religion, I can see myself being the kind of mom that just sits down with them and asks them like, what's going on, like what about it is missing for you, or where is this coming from, and just really trying to understand the root of the issue. And sometimes also, I think for me, just knowing my personality, I feel like I'd be pretty casual and laid back about it. I wouldn't make it a big deal because it's so normal for anyone to make an impulsive decision around such a sensitive subject, because sometimes when I feel like you bring a lot of stress upon a subject, I feel like it's so normal to just respond because you're afraid. With some of you who are non-Muslim, is like, have you ever felt pressured into doing something? Have you ever felt like you were at your wit's ends because of the things that were being said around you? Have you ever felt like you were having to constantly feel like put on a facade for others and not for yourself? Have you ever felt like you're putting other people's feelings ahead instead of yours? Having these conversations made me realize, like, being a Muslim convert, being a Muslim parent, we are responsible for a lot of big things, but I also am huge advocate for like not forcing anything upon anyone, and I'm huge on just letting my child do what's best for them, and just me giving them the tools for them to survive and tools to guide them, but for them to build a sense of their own identity. And I never want to rush them into anything. And so this kind of question really made me think about my journey, and I would love for my child to say, hey, like, I want to experiment. Hey, I just want to try it on. Like, I just want to get a feel. I kind of want to do what you did, Mom. Like, if my child said that to me, I would be like, yeah, like, let's make it happen. And if anyone gave me stick for it, I'd be like, mind your business. And if she takes it off, we're going to work through it together, inshallah. Okay, so the last reflection and thought process that I want to touch on that I've been asked and has been brought up in my mom circle is how I would feel if my children or any of my children decided to question Islam. And again, these aren't really conversations my husband and I have. I think there was always a sense of fear earlier on, when our families were, I guess, knew about my husband and I coming together. And I think it's always like the fear of unknown, of, the influences of a non-Muslim family. How much are they going to have? How much influence are they going to have when it comes to forming your, family, and how involved are they going to be? What habits do they have, and like vice versa, right? Like, the pressure that can come with being a Muslim, like my family was really aware of, and like how much of this practice is going to, affect their mental health. And you see a lot of videos, you see a lot of things online, you hear a lot of stories, and you kind of just have to like trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have to trust yourself. And so I definitely trust myself as a mama. I think that's very important to have. And I think also feeling confident and brave enough to like stick up for your family is very important. I'm not someone to always stay quiet. I think that if I'm quiet, the quieter that I am, I'm like my brother once described, like the most scarier that you are. I remember when he said that to me, he's like, "You're definitely going to make a great mama." I just think that people don't really know a lot of this of you. So anyway, when it comes to this, I think I would probably just keep a close eye on my kids. I don't talk about it with my husband because we both don't really like to think or wish or put anything out there that's gonna be, I guess in a way like hurtful and maybe to us and hard for us to hear and think about. So it's almost like manifestation, like we don't want to think about it. But when this conversation did come up, I did see it as a very true and honest question, because when I was explaining to my mom friends that I was once, Catholic, and then I was raised as a Christian, and then there was a lot of these communions I was a part of, and my relationship with the church and my family's relationship with the church, and how much prayer we were doing at home, and how much of my lifestyle, how much of my upbringing was based around religion, they were shocked to hear that like I had denounced myself, then I studied, and then I kind of went back, and then I decided right then and there that I was going to convert and then take my shahada and then became Muslim. Like it was just like this. So it was fair, and I actually in that moment I was able to respond to the question. I was like, well, then I'm just going to have to deal with it, and I'm going to think that that's fair. And some of you might be thinking like, that's crazy, like how can you accept it? And the thing is, I'm not accepting it. I just think that, again, if my child is to come up to me and say that like I am seeking questions, like I'm finding some things a little bit like uncertain and I doubt certain things within like Islam, I'd be like, yes, as you should. Like Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally prays in the Quran that like he does not want just like fake believers. He's going to test and challenge us in our faith. He's going to test us in what we know and how we practice. And even for myself, I, as a Muslim convert, like starting off, I really focused on what I knew and what I didn't know. There was so much information coming at me, and like I still don't know yet how my children are going to learn the practice, like, at home and outside of home, and what other influences they're going to have around like the Muslim community. I'm going to do my best that I possibly can to teach them what I know, and my husband, I know, will do the same. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be some questions along the way, and I think that's so normal. And I think as a parent, as especially me as a Muslim convert, I feel like I also have this unique perspective and experience where asking questions doesn't always necessarily mean, though, that you're actually doubting your religion. And so I think that's also one angle that I would look at it with my children. If they ever came up to me and they were questioning faith, I'd be like, just because you feel a certain way about something doesn't mean you have to question everything. And then I would also share with them, which is something that I shared with the moms, is that like when I first came into my marriage with my husband, we talked about many things. There were a few things where we weren't agreeing with when it came to the school of thought. And so overall, like, there's always questions. And again, that's where even I've mentioned in one of my previous podcasts, like I've really narrowed down where I get my information from. And I am part of a WhatsApp group with a sheikh where he is always responding to only questions. And I find that to be helpful. And I think also being a mom that can model that, like not being afraid of just always seeking answers, learning, reading a lot, knowing where your resources are coming from when you're like taking information is so important. And it's just something that I think everyone should be doing. So knowing that we do that on our own, like both my husband and I, but then we also do it with inside of our religion and like what we believe in. I think inshallah, like we hope and pray that like our kids are going to see that and they're going to feel secure and safe to like ask questions and to, you know, be able to think about like their faith in a different way. And again, just always getting down to the root cause of like what's coming up for them. Maybe it's a social thing, maybe it's a political thing, maybe it's a family thing. And so, yeah, like I find it so fun and stimulating to have these conversations with my non-Muslim mom friends because one, I feel like they get to learn more about me and like get to learn my stand on just being a parent. And I think a lot of the moms have responded and been very receptive when it comes to how I see things and view things because in a lot of ways I can kind of they can relate with me when it comes to just asking questions. You know, when we talk about these things, I always think about just in general as a parent, how would you feel if someone did something that you saw as outright wrong or that you could have never possibly imagined? You know, and an example of that too is like right now, like when it comes to the transgender, we're seeing a lot of, and some parents are a little more relaxed about the topic and other parents are like, oh, I can't think about it or I don't want to put it out there. And I think when I bring it back to something as sensitive and as big of a topic as that, when it comes to religion, I think they can understand the weight of how something, what they might see as at first like, oh, it's like whatever, it's like, you know, it's not that problematic. To us as Muslim people, it can be something so big because to me, Islam is a lifestyle. Everything that I do, there's a reason, there's an intention behind it. And through these conversations, they've been able to understand that. And so it's been such a beautiful thing to be able to share, but it also has allowed me to really think about things I don't normally want to think about. But at the same time, it has given me the opportunity to just think about the privilege that I've had of, you know, growing in a home, in a place and space where my parents were really open and they were very calm for the most part when it came to me converting to Islam. Sure, they had questions. Sure, they had fears. I think that's very natural for any parent. And I think that any of these two situations that I just talked about today can be relatable to a lot of other Muslim parents out there. You know, there's always that fear that if a child steps away, you know, or puts themselves in a position that's so different from what you would envision of them and for them, it's always going to make you feel like, oh, am I going to disconnect from them now? So that's something that I think any parent can relate to. You never want to feel like you're going to lose your kid. You never want to feel like you're going to no longer be able to relate to them. You know, you love them, you carried them, and so you always want to have that. Anyways, let me know if there's anything that you guys are thinking about as Muslim converts or Muslim parents. I'm interested to hear, and if you have any questions or thoughts about what I've said on this podcast, please leave them in the comments. We'd love to see them, or you can directly message me on Instagram at Rising Convert. That's it for today, everyone. Take care. Inshallah, I'll catch you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.